Welcome and namaste to the Golden Child Podcast, the podcast to help you to reconnect with your inner child to live the life you truly desire. Here's the intro.
Round 5.
And we start. Here we go back with Jeannine Kim. Okay, our first guest of the Golden Child Podcast. So Jeannine is, you know what? I'm not gonna say anything. She is gonna tell us who she is and her transformation. Okay, I'm just gonna say to our audience that she is an intuitive astrologer, a medium, and soon to be author. So welcome, Jeannine, to the podcast. Really super excited to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Enrico. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
That's great. So let's start with talk about yourself in a way that we never talked about before in a podcast when it comes to your transformation from a former IPO trader of 10 plus year turned mystic. I love it. I just love it. I'm super excited. Go for it.
Thank you. Sure. Well, it's in a way that I've never explained it. I love that. I was just thinking about this morning before us getting together, like what I was going to share. And what came to me was like, oh my goodness, if you would have told me 20 some years ago that if I followed my dream, as crazy as it sounded back then, and let it all go, that I would be able to sit in my room, chat with you from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Italy, talking about my journey, my passion, my experiences, how much I love my clients and my work. I would not believe you. I don't know. I don't know if I could have imagined this life. So going from an IPO trader, I was very good with numbers, which, it led me to astrology and my passion, of course, for the stars from when I was younger. But ever since I was a girl, I've always been kind of aligned with things that are beyond what we would call the norm. When I was younger, I'd have dreams and I would share them with my mom and my family, and because then they would show up. I would say, oh my gosh, I had a dream about this house last night, Mom. And we'd pull up in front of it for the first time. And so I was always kind of operating on a different level of being. However, who could reflect that back, right? Who could reflect that back without being a little like, oh, that's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
So I just tucked it in. But then when I went out and started, meeting the world and working, all those bits started growing inside of me. And I would continue. I started a deep yoga practice in the early 90s. And I would read books like Gary Zukav and Shirley MacLaine and Andrew Weil. And I was always trying to stay very healthy and healed because I'm a sensitive bird. So my body doesn't really respond to medicines quite like others do. And I need to stay on track, to be clear. All these things just grew inside of me, bubbled inside of me. And before you know it, the IPO world, the financial world, just, it wasn't for me anymore. It was too much.
Yeah.
It was too much. So I took the leap and I jumped into the healing world and I never looked back.
Awesome. It requires a lot of willpower, and strength. Really going, against the flow, like going against, I would say the vast majority of the people. I would say vast majority of the people they're living someone else's life, really not following their passions. And then, on the short term, it's okay living, I would say, with a sense of complete certainty. But when you don't have uncertainty, you're not changing stuff, you don't grow. It's not good for the long term. And then people, they become stressed, obsessed, they don't know who they are, where they're going. And what you did was, truly inspiring. But was there like a moment, like an X moment during your career as an IPO trader that made you realize, okay, you know what, screw it, No, I'm burning the boats.
Yeah, actually, it was building over time, but there was a peak moment. And it was, I just never imagined that what I loved on the inside, I was living in Chicago at the time, and what I loved was eating healthy. I became a vegetarian in the 90s.
Okay.
I was, reading all these spiritual things, which is different than my Catholic upbringing,
Okay.
and so they were in these books, and there were these people. And then all of a sudden I had a chance to move to California, and it was with my ex-husband, and we moved to California, and I didn't have to explain what a taco was without meat. Like, it didn't take me an hour to tell them.
Yeah,
Like, truly,
Chicago too. Yeah.
they couldn't understand it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm with my people. Like, it
Yeah.
was amazing. And in that moment, it really grew. And then on top of it, it was just every time I was in a position, I was doing fabulous, but something would happen, and the job would go away. Or the last position I had been working, going to school at night. I'm like, you know what? They have massage schools here. I'm just going to go to school at night and be a trader, an IPO trader during the day. I could do it. And so,
I
yeah,
love
and I
that.
became Reiki trained, and all these things at night. And so it was getting louder and louder on the inside. And then come February of 2001, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with this brokerage industry, but I can't leave yet. But to make sure that I do it, to kind of hold myself
Yeah.
accountable, I found a program in China studies program, where I could go and study Tuina, traditional Chinese medicine in Beijing, and also feng shui. And that was in October. So I booked it. I signed up. I put my money down, and I'm like, now I have between February and October to pull this off. And I felt something brewing at work. I had an assistant. We were planning this huge conference and meeting in Palm Desert for the gentleman that we worked
Yeah.
for. Sure enough, we had the party. It was over. I went in on a Friday, and my computer wouldn't turn on. And my boss looked at me. He's like, go talk to the head boss. And they let me go.
Wow.
They had to, like, pack me up and let me go. However, because there was no reason like that, that I could have done it, they said, well, so you don't sue us,
Yeah.
you could sue us, or you could take this check and we'll pay for your health insurance for a year. So I was like,
Healing.
oh, all right, I'll take it. And I was shocked. I mean, I was still planning on leaving, but isn't that interesting how a month before, when I committed to myself, look how it unfolded.
Yeah. It was like
So
universe basically gave you a chance, like for
that
a
was it.
year. Yeah.
That was
They
it. And
opened.
go ahead.
No, it's like they opened basically a door for you, like a
Yes.
year where you didn't have to worry about insurance and stuff. You got covered, and you can, unleash your fullest potential, like really serve the people you want, truly.
That's exactly what it was. And yeah. And so I know that, I've had other moments and moments prior to that where maybe it didn't turn out that seamless. However, when the years go by, and you're probably aware of this too, when you finally do trust, right? Look where you're at. Look what you've done on your journey. When you do trust, the alignment is so spot on, and it's so enriching
Yeah.
for myself and the people around me, because I'm really standing in truth. So yeah.
Just in flow. I totally agree. Like when you are in a flow state, everything is up, and you're not surprised anymore. You're just like, oh, okay, this is how it works. Like you feel like a maestro. You're like leading the orchestra, and you're like, you're leading your life in the way you want. You're creating life in the way you want. It's truly powerful. That's why I'm asking you. Could you describe what you do in one sentence for our listeners?
I support people to step into sustainable whole self transformation.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. And why don't you talk about a little bit about your offers and services? I know you have because I checked your website, which by the way I love it. Uh, by the way, I bought the Dominion. I'm creating mine. Yeah, I bought the Dominion. Yeah, I was super, super happy. It's like, I don't know, buying a piece of land, which can be minuscule, but it doesn't really matter. It's yours. So Henry the Teacher right now is a official brand, I would say, on the internet. Super, super excited. I wanted to share with you.
Yay, yay for you.
And I know you have a subscription, also group working, one-on-one, live event, personal event. Why don't you tell us about, all the services that you provide?
Sure. I offer anything from one-on-one personal sessions
Yeah.
where it's just like one-off session. If you're curious about my work, or if it's just, you're going through something and you need some insight and reflection. And I do that with astrology. All my work is intuitive. So sometimes some people just prefer intuitive reading, and I use tarot as well. And then other people prefer the astrology. So I do intuition with astrology, and the mediumship is all mixed in there. And then I offer mentoring work where we take that deeper. And so I really go into deep transformation. And when I do my work, I not only intend for you to get clarity intellectually, but I also make sure that I tap into my holistic health practitioner background, my traditional Chinese medicine background, my yoga background, whatever comes up, so you could take the information and really integrate it into your life. Not just hear it, but I usher out for you practical next steps, so you really feel supported once we're done, once it's over. So yeah.
Yeah, you don't take, I would say, knowledge just from one path. You're actually using a multidisciplinary approach, which is actually absolutely amazing. What education should be like, rather than just studying economics from an economical point of view. You should study from a psychological point of view, neuroscience, and these kind of things. I think that what you're offering, this holistic approach when it comes to mentoring, and all this healers, I would say, is that you're not giving them just a part of the truth, that you're giving them, like that tiny, tiny piece. So rather than seeing things from this tiny perspective, they see from like very much broader perspective.
Oh, I love that. I love that reflection. I've never really worded it that way. And that is exactly what it is. And, my goal is so that people live this information, because there's so much information you could gather, which is so meaningful. And there's so many healing modalities now that people can speak of, and it's common conversation, but it's useful when we integrate it into every moment of our life, not just kind of keep it for the weekend, or, and sometimes that's how it starts out, and that's perfect, but really let it seep into your whole existence.
I totally agree. Let me show you something. So this is, I think, it's a perfect example for your business, also mine. This is, I think, it's called a kaleidoscope. Okay, that you can
Yes.
see like from different colors and stuff. But what you're offering, rather than just using the red lenses, you're giving them the blue, the yellow, the green, the black, white, this kind of things. Rather, I don't know. This is what I do also. Like when I do a multidisciplinary approach, rather than just focusing on tiny little piece, which is important. I think the
Yes.
kaleidoscope, actually, can help people to understand, to see the bigger picture, if you know what I mean.
I love that. I love it. A kaleidoscope. I hope you don't mind if I borrow that and pass it on to my clients, because I
Go
love it.
for it. Go
I
for it.
love it.
Really, I would be
Thank
just,
you.
I would
Love
be
it.
delighted, really. Uh, one of the things that I love the most about the work you do, that you said, is that the word sustainability. It's really, really important. Can you elaborate this concept for us? Why it's so important? Also by connecting the topic that we discussed last time, coaching versus mentoring, and why it's so important when you grow. It has to be sustainable. Maybe you can use a metaphor. I always use the rocket. Like you cannot go from the Earth to the moon like in one bit. It doesn't work like that. So, and actually, the hardest part is getting off the ground, but it has to be sustainable. Otherwise, the fuel inside the rocket can explode and everyone inside can die. So it has to be sustainable. Go for it.
I love it. I love the rockets. I was totally into that visual while you were chatting. So a way that I love to invite my clients and anybody really to approach their healing work is to look at the big four. And what I call the big four is your spiritual body, which is different from your soul, by the way. Okay, the soul is kind of like that never ending. You wake up in the morning and whoop, it looks out your eyeballs. That's for me, my concept of that soul. It's watching all the parts. But then we have the spiritual body, number one. Number two is your mental body, then your emotional body, and then your physical body. And so there's four aspects of us that every day, if we could meet all four of them as if they are, first way to look at it is if they are our babies, right? If your bodies were your babies, do you have a favorite baby? Do you have a least favorite baby? And how can we say, well, gosh, if we're not being fair to those pieces within us, then we're going to reflect or receive back injustice externally, because everything that's here is reflected out there. So every day, make space. You may not even know how to meet that part, but make space for it. Align to the truth that is coming from the emotion, the space that wants to be heard, shifting the mind, getting inspired, take care of the body differently. And another way to look at that, which I love, it kind of goes along with your rocket ship, is imagine that all four pieces of you are legs of a table.
Okay.
And the soul is the top of the table. So if you have all four legs on the top of the table, and you want to put everything in your life on top of it, what you love, who's in your life, what you do, all of that you're creating, that you're wanting to experience, lays on top of that table. If one of the legs is not cared for, it's going to just fall right over.
And the soul just goes out of balance.
It all goes away.
Yeah.
Right. And so the sustainable piece is that, we could collect this healing information by way of the mind, which is the entry point. Most times we bring it in, let it be, but not just keeping it there, having it meet the other pieces of us. And this is where your question or your pointed moment of mentoring versus coaching comes in. I love mentoring because mentoring meets the person where they're at. For me, coaching almost feels like it comes this way from an intellectual way. And that may just be not that one is right or wrong, but it's coaching is they can both be the same, but when you mentor, you're just reflecting back, and then really helping them kind of build those four legs together. And coaching can do the same, but sometimes it could be just from an intellectual standpoint. Not always, but sometimes. Yeah.
I will say that the sentence "know thyself," it's kind of perfect, right? By reconnecting with yourself and who you are, you basically, like, the more you know about yourself, the more you can heal, about past traumas, rather than just going to someone who is fixing your problem, giving you high performance habits, blah, 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 and actually turning you into something that you're not. I would say, why don't you get to know yourself a little bit more rather than changing towards something you don't even recognize yourself in, I don't know, in 5 years or 1 year or anything like that? Would you agree?
Yeah. And I feel like, I know you and I had this conversation before, which I loved, is that, it's people can only meet you as deeply as you've met yourself. And so those that are going on a healing journey or, wanting to be coach or mentor, whatever word you choose, how deep are you healing yourself? Where are you going? because this isn't just wisdom that we want to pass on via the mind. It is, everything is frequency first, everything is energy first. And that is not just a spiritual concept, that is quantum physics.
Yeah.
And so when you go that deeply on the healing, I've seen this, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. People follow you and how deep you've gone on your own work. And it's really, you're walking the talk.
Yeah.
You've moved out of your greatest trauma, and people can sense that, that if you've gone there, then they are safe enough to be held, and, to really know that they could do the same as well for themselves.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. That's why also guidance could be like a nice word, like a guide. I
Yeah,
don't know that you
guidance.
need to
I love
basically
that.
cross the bridge, and then
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
know if you're familiar with the Quran. I don't know, like the stories a little bit. Okay.
No, I'm
Actually,
not. Tell me. Tell me.
actually, no, I have a MA in interpreting and translation. One of the first languages that I learned was Arabic, and I studied the Quran, the Sunnah, and all the basically the history of Islam. And there's a very interesting uh story about al-Bi'r, which is no, sorry, al-Khidr, sorry, which is basically the green guy. It's not the correct translation, but anyway. So this guy who helps one of the prophets going through several tasks, even disturbing one, and he is a guide, but the prophet shouldn't say anything, even when things are very, very bad. Like, no, the Khidr is starting to kill a boy. And saying, no, why are you doing that? No, I said you don't need to judge because the boy will turn into a bad guy and this kind of stuff. Okay. It's very connected to judgment and non-attachment into the yoga philosophy, I would say. But I would say what I really like that is that this guide that is leading you from A to B, not trying to change you, but only giving you basically not even advice, pointing you. I would say pointing you. That's it. Just, hey, look at that. Look at that. What makes you think? How do you feel about it? That's it. I think this is our role. We cannot change people unless they want to.
One of my favorite topics of all time, and I truly feel that anybody going into healing work or mentoring work or coaching work, guidance, that healer 101 training is, you can't heal anybody. And I'm a healer, but you can't heal anybody. All you can do is reflect, hold the space for, become your own, share. But then, just like you said, you guide, you point, and then they find their way. And that may seem like an obviousness, but for years, my own experience, oh heck no, I was going to heal the world, and I was going to heal all the people that hurt me, so then I could get the love from them. I mean,
Yeah.
this got me on my
Oh,
journey,
yeah.
I'm telling you. And that's not the way it goes.
No.
And so I've learned that it's just even the people, they're ready for it when they're ready for it. So you may share your information with them, and you're planting the seeds, and that has to be enough. That has to be enough. And in this culture that we live in, oftentimes it isn't. It's almost like we're programmed. We need to see these end results. And the invitation here feels like, well, just be in the space of planting the seeds, be the constant gardener, and let that be enough. Just know that that's where the value is.
I'm writing because I love the like be the constant gardener. Noted. That's very nice.
Yeah.
Actually, there's something I really I'm curious. Also, it's like also an advice that I'm gonna ask you for myself, and because you have been through that. So, you sent me a very nice sentence when we met on Matchmaker. Stepped into the holistic core life during a time when so many just didn't quite understand what that meant. Organic food, spirituality, mind, yoga, 30 years ago. How did you feel? You were basically alone because like there wasn't a lot of spirituality. I would say back in the day it was, but it was very foggy. Maybe it's still right now, but probably foggier. than it is right now, and taking a path where basically nobody understood, and you still did it. And well, like especially right now when you're working in the personal growth, like you work your body, your mind, your emotion, your spiritual part, and basically 9 out of 10 they don't do it, or maybe they do one and bad. How did it make you feel going really against the world 30 years ago? And what is the advice that you could give to someone who has been doing this maybe alone, or I don't know, like is doing a journey very intense? There's so much resistance, but at the same time wants to pull it through.
Oh, that's the big question. That's such a great question. Well, first of all, I'm a real internal person. And when I was born, I was adopted. It was 1967. I was given up for adoption at birth. And my parents brought me home some months after that. And so, I feel like oftentimes, when you look at that primal wound, people who are adopted have more of this like inner space that it almost feels inherently separate from what's going on around them. And so when I look back, I realized that was kind of my outlet, my oasis. It was a default, but it was also an oasis of where I can go. And so I always felt a little different anyway from the get-go, whether my parents kind of slipped it in, and I don't remember being told, so they did a great job of telling me, but I always felt different. And so fast forward, and here I am drawn to these things that are just not the same. I remember when the first time I did yoga, I was like 7, watching
Wow.
PBS,
I
and there
love
was
it.
the lady in a unitard. I'll never forget, like this taupe unitard, and she had long brown hair, and I was mesmerized by her. And I would do that work. I often think, oh my gosh, I'm going to go look back on channel 11 and see on PBS and see if I could find some old video of her. But I love that. I love the stars. And
Yeah.
I was very what I would call religious, my family wasn't overly religious, but all these things were already there.
Yeah.
And so they were always just me. So as I grew and went into the brokerage industry, and in the 90s, it was weird. It was hard. I would just kind of be really quiet about what I did in the books that I read. But as it became louder and people really were like, why do you always have to be so different? I'm like, I swear, if you knew how uncomfortable it was to be this different, you would get it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I wanted to be different from here, because even my adoption wound really wanted me to fit in,
Yeah.
especially because of that. But I'm not, the truth could not keep itself quiet. And so it's hard. And right now, like you said, it's not as foggy. And even though there's some people that still don't get it now more than ever, people are talking about it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, here we are. Yay. We're finally having a conversation. I don't have to worry about it with, a couple people in the corner. But what I would say to people is trust what your inside wants. Trust what is calling you that you cannot put down. And that doesn't mean that when you trust that it is going to be easy, because the trail that you leave behind is old conditioning. And there's going to be some people who love where you're going, and
Yeah.
some people who really, really don't. And I have lost so many friends, family members. They still they don't appreciate
Yeah.
who I am. I'm an
Yeah.
intuitive
That's
from
terrible.
when I was
Yeah.
younger, or what I do. They cannot appreciate it at all. So you have to, it's almost like a little nod from the universe saying, does truth mean more to you, or does conditioning? And I choose truth every time.
Yeah. Hallelujah. Yeah. I totally agree. All right. I would rather be like 100% myself rather than be, I don't know, someone
Yeah.
I'm not. If you don't like who I am, I accept it. You have all the right not to like me, dislike me, or whatever. I'm not gonna change or shrink so other people won't feel uncomfortable beside me. So
Thank you. That is exactly it in a nutshell. And just having the courage to do that, and to know that the outcome from that, everything that you align with and create from that point, is pure truth. And you're giving them a permission slip to do the same. And most times that is what the uncomfortableness is, when they can't reflect it back to you,
yeah,
is that not always, but they just, maybe there's a piece of them that they're really afraid to align with, and they just can't even articulate it, or they're just not aware. But yeah, you're giving them permission.
you have permission. And that's the only thing that matters.
Right.
Let's end this because we have 6 minutes before Zoom ends. And I have one more question, which is
Yes.
actually all about the podcast, the inner child. So if your inner child could hear you right now, okay, what would you say to her right now? Imagine you were writing like a letter to her. What would you write to your inner child?
I would say, um, trust everything that you are.
Okay.
Trust everything that is happening to you, and have the courage to move forward when you know it's time to move forward. And moving forward sounds easier than letting go, but they go hand in hand. But truly trust who you are. It will not steer you wrong,
No,
for sure.
I love it. I love it. That's the same thing I would probably say to my inner child, right? Like, doesn't really matter. I know it sucks being different, but it's who you are. You don't want to lose who you are. You don't want to lose your identity. You don't want to shrink so that other people won't feel insecure. You're meant to, we're all meant to shine as children. And then all of a sudden, because of society, school, education, call it whatever you want, we just, shrink so the other won't feel disappointed and stuff. And I don't know. I have a lot of people, around me. I don't know. They may be, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna say successful from a financial point of view, but at the same time, I can sense their energy. They're not happy. I'm not saying that money are not important. Money isn't important. I think it's important, but at the same time, you should live your dharma. You should live your purpose. Should who you're meant to be. Okay, and it's super hard. It's super scary. I've been doing this for a long time. It was super hard to really step in and say, okay, that's it. I'm burning the boats. I really don't care who I am. And trust me, it's hard because at the beginning, you feel alone because all the people that you know, they probably will leave you because you really unleash your energy, your full potential. But that's okay. I would say I thank them for what they gave me,
Mhm.
and then it's time to move on.
I'm right there with you, man. I'm
Yeah,
right there with you. And they are some of my biggest inspirations,
yeah, they
is
are.
right.
They
They're
are.
they're part of it. You would think it's like somebody floating over here. Yeah, there's a couple of those, but some of my biggest inspirations were the hardships. So I'm right there with you, right on, spot on. Yeah.
I totally
Thank you.
agree. Okay, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much, Jenny, really for coming to the Child podcast. Really, it was so nice connecting with you, and I wish you a fantastic day. I'm not gonna close the call immediately. Just basically the podcast recording. I just want to say, goodbye to our listeners. Thank you for listening to the Golden Child podcast, the podcast to help you to reconnect your inner child, to live the life you truly desire and not somebody else. Thank you so much. Peace and namaste from Italy and United States of America. Yeah. Thank you. Ciao.